Hello and welcome. You're watching Climate Clock on CNBC TV 18, where we discuss everything climate change and sustainability on the show. Well, we all have been talking about big investments in the renewable energy space, but hydropower is one segment in this space that does not get as much attention. There is an interesting report by ICRA which talks about how hydro capacity addition has been very sluggish, the share has been coming down, and that India needs 18 gigawatt of incremental hydro capacity by 2030. To discuss the report and the way forward for hydropower space, we are joined by Girish Kumar Kadam, who is the Senior Vice President and Co-Group Head, ICRA Limited. Mr. Kadam, thanks a lot for joining us on CNBC TV 18 and discussing this interesting viewpoint. Well, let me start with the first question here. As per your report, hydro capacity addition has been very sluggish. The overall share in power generation capacity has come down to 11.8% now. That compares with 23% in 2010. What has led to this fall, and why are there not more investments in this space?
Yeah, you are right. In fact, we have seen about 20 to 22 gigawatt of hydro capacity addition happening over the last 2 decades. And that is just about 3% CAGR growth as far as hydro capacity addition is concerned. You're right. The execution challenges on the hydro sector are quite significant. And that pertains to high level of geological challenges, high level of RNR specific issues, more importantly, huge delays on the land acquisition front, huge delays in getting the clearances and so on. And which is why we have seen significant execution bottlenecks in the hydro capacity development so far. And it has happened predominantly within the CPSU segment only. On the other hand, the execution challenges within the other renewable energy sources like solar and wind are significantly much lower. In fact, we saw a very rapid rise in the renewable installations, particularly in the solar and the wind segment over the last 8 years. And on top of that, in fact, we saw a considerable rise in the thermal capacity addition between calendar 2005 till calendar 2012. Thanks to the kind of capacity addition that we have seen, both in the thermal followed by the renewable energy space, we saw a corresponding gradual steep decline in the share of hydro capacity addition on a pan-India basis. So that has been the case predominantly because of execution bottlenecks. We continue to see, the subdued capacity addition on the hydro segment.
Okay. So, Mr. Kadam, as you rightly pointed out, there are higher additions happening in the solar space, and we have not seen continuous investments in the hydropower space. So, what do you think needs to be done, both on the government side, on the private capex side, to ensure that there is more investment here?
Yeah. So certainly, see, the hydro sector is systemically important, from the policy standpoint, from the energy sector standpoint in the long run. And that is a very much well-known fact. It has a solid ability to meet the peaking power requirements, to meet any auxiliary or balancing power requirements in the grid. And as you're aware, we are going to witness a rapid rise in the renewable energy installations over the next 1 decade, particularly in the solar and the wind space. And as a result, hydro sector will have its own systemic importance going forward. So that's one. So with that background, Government of India has already given some kind of policy stimulus 1.5 years back in terms of categorizing the large hydro also under the renewable space, and also introducing tariff rationalization measures, and also introducing the HPO norms very recently a year back. So these are certainly developments which are incrementally positive for the hydro sector. In fact, HPO norm is in place now at a policy level which stands at about 0.2% for FY22, which is set to rise to about 2.8% by FY30. And more importantly, what is required now is the implementation of these measures, whether it is related to the implementation of the HPO norms by the relevant state level regulatory authorities across the states, because we continue to see a slow progress in notification of these HPO norms across the states in line with the policy targets. That's one. Secondly, implementation of these norms by the obligated entities is also required thereafter. That's one. Secondly, the tariff rationalization norms have been proposed by the Ministry of Power. They are yet to be notified by the regulatory body CRC in the respective MYT tariff regulatory framework. So what is really required is the implementation of various policy measures which has been outlined by the Ministry of Power over the last couple of years.
And a follow-up on that, how would the rationalization of tariff announcements by CERC give impetus to this particular sector?
Yeah, certainly this is very important, from the hydro sector standpoint. You see, if you look at the average capital cost for the hydropower project is anywhere between 12 to 13 crore based on our analyzed data for various projects executed by the CPSU. And in that context, if you look at the average levelized tariff for the hydro project for the CPSU is anywhere between 5 to 5.5 rupees a unit. And in that context, the overall tariff competitiveness for the hydro projects is quite modest. And given the fact that average power purchase cost for the state-owned distribution utilities, which are the ultimate off-takers, it is anywhere between 4 to 5 rupees a unit. So to improve the tariff competitiveness of hydro energy, the government of India at a policy level has outlined certain tariff rationalization measures in terms of the extension in the useful life up to 40 years, extension in the repayment tenure from 12 to 18 year, backloading of tariff with escalation of 2% and so on. So, and also, Government of India has also outlined the budgetary support of 1 crore per megawatt for a large hydro projects, for more than 200 megawatt capacity to part fund the enabling infrastructure at the earlier stages. So, if you combine all these policy measures, the levelized tariff can be easily brought down by another 10 to 12%. On a levelized tariff estimate under the base case scenario is about 5.12 rupees as per our estimates. It can come down to about 4.6 rupees a unit on a levelized basis for a hydropower project, assuming all the benefits. And in fact, with the backloading of tariff, if that were to be proposed, in the initial 5 years, the tariff can be brought down even below 4 rupees a unit. And that makes a quite a cost competitive proposition, from the hydro project developers perspective. And that will also be cost competitive tariff, from the state discoms perspective. So these measures are certainly useful and quite important, to improve the tariff competitiveness of the hydro energy. And as a result, these measures require, timely implementation by the CRC as well as SCRCs in the respective states.
Okay, that is interesting. Some important points that you've made out there, how there can actually be tariff rationalization as far as the hydropower segment is concerned. So last question before we let you go, Mr. Kadam, you did mention about the budgetary requirements. You briefly mentioned that we are closer to the budget. Anything that the sector can expect from the government in terms of more investments, more strategies out there, something that the industry is expecting?
Yeah. See, the government of India has a solid policy focus in the renewables. And in fact, now we are talking about 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel capacity by 2030. And in that context, the funding requirements are quite significant. In fact, in our estimates, the funding requirements are as 470 to 500 billion dollars. And in that context, we expect the budget to announce some kind of a measures to augment the long-term funding avenues, for the industry stakeholders. That's one. Secondly, we also expect some kind of the policy measures to support the storage capacity, which could be either for battery storage or as well as for the pump hydro storage. And the fact that the storage capacity will have important relevance given the increasing mix of the renewables in the overall energy basket. On top of that, we also expect the budgetary allocation towards some kind of the PLI outlay quantum to get increased towards incentivizing the domestic module manufacturing capacities in the country. On top of that, we also expect the budgetary allocation to increase towards strengthening of the T&D infrastructure and also various capex schemes which have been outlined for improvement of the viability metrics, for the state-owned distribution utilities. Okay. So all in all, the policy focus will be there towards strengthening of the T&D network, viability of the discoms, and more importantly, to augment the funding avenues for the renewable energy investments.
Okay, all right, Mr. Kadam, thank you so much for joining us and discussing this hidden aspect of the overall renewable energy aspect that we've been talking about. Thanks a lot for joining us on Climate Clock.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
All right, that's the update as far as ICRA's report on hydropower is concerned. The investments have been sluggish, but it remains to see what the outlook will be from here on. With that, we take your leave on this edition of Climate Clock. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18.